Every year, my family has this fall tradition. We all head out to my Uncle Charlie's farm in the middle of nowhere, about an hour from town, for a night of good food, bonfires, and, most importantly, the annual hayride. Uncle Charlie has this massive old tractor and a big wooden wagon he uses to take us out through his fields for a nighttime ride under the stars. It was late October, and we'd just finished up dinner at Uncle Charlie's. The sky was already dark by the time we piled into the wagon, laughing and chatting like we always do. The cold air nipped at our faces, but the blankets and the warmth of being together made it bearable. Uncle Charlie fired up the tractor, and we set off down the dirt road that cut through his fields. The first part of the ride was like any other year. The tractor rumbled along, the stars twinkled overhead, and the sound of the engine was the only thing breaking the silence of the countryside. We were about halfway through the ride when we heard it, a loud engine revving in the distance, way too close for comfort. I turned to look, and that's when we saw it. A truck speeding down the narrow road toward us, its headlights blinding as it came closer. At first, we thought it was just some local passing through. But then, as the truck got closer, it didn't slow down. Instead, it roared past us, swerving slightly as it zoomed by the wagon, making all of us jump. "What the hell?" my cousin Mike muttered, pulling the blanket tighter around him. "That guy's crazy," I added, my heart still racing from the near miss. We all exchanged uneasy glances, but Uncle Charlie, who was driving the tractor, waved it off. "Probably some idiot from town. Don't worry about it," he said, though even he looked a little shaken. We tried to go back to enjoying the ride, but the mood had shifted. A few minutes later, we heard the engine again. This time, the truck was coming back toward us. The lights appeared in the distance, and we all tensed up, watching as the truck barreled down the road toward us once more. Only this time, the driver wasn't just passing us by. The truck sped up behind the wagon, its high beams blinding us. It got closer and closer, until it was practically tailgating the tractor. The driver started flashing his brights over and over, the lights burning into our eyes. "What is this guy doing?" my sister Emma whispered, her voice shaking. Uncle Charlie slowed the tractor down, trying to let the truck pass. But instead of going around us, the driver swerved back and forth behind the wagon, as if he was trying to find a way to get even closer. We could hear the roar of the engine and the screeching of tires on the dirt road. Panic started to creep in. "He's trying to mess with us," my cousin Mike said, fear lacing his voice. Suddenly, the truck swerved to the side, pulling up alongside the tractor. The driver, an older man with a wild look in his eyes, glanced over at us for a second before slamming on the brakes and cutting in front of the tractor, forcing Uncle Charlie to stop. "What the hell?" Uncle Charlie yelled, slamming his hand on the tractor's horn. But the truck didn't budge. It just sat there in front of us, blocking the road. For what felt like an eternity, we all sat there in tense silence, staring at the truck's taillights, waiting to see what the driver would do next. Then, without warning, the truck sped off down the road, disappearing around a bend. We all breathed a sigh of relief, thinking it was over. But not even 2 minutes later, the truck reappeared, barreling down the road toward us again, this time at full speed. "He's gonna hit us!" Emma screamed, gripping the edge of the wagon. Uncle Charlie tried to pull the tractor off to the side, but the road was too narrow. The truck was coming straight for the back of the wagon, and there was nothing we could do. In a desperate move, Mike grabbed a bale of hay and shouted, "Throw it!" Without thinking, we all grabbed handfuls of hay and started tossing them at the truck's windshield as fast as we could. The hay bales hit the windshield, causing the driver to swerve. The truck veered off the road and into a cornfield, its tires screeching as it plowed through the tall stalks. The truck disappeared into the darkness of the field, and we sat there, stunned, trying to catch our breath. For a few minutes, no one spoke. We didn't know if the driver was injured, if he was going to come back, or if we were finally safe. "We need to get back to the house," Uncle Charlie said, his voice calm but urgent. He fired up the tractor again, and we sped back down the road as fast as the old machine would go. When we finally made it back to the farm, Uncle Charlie called the state troopers. It took them nearly an hour to get out to his property, and by the time they arrived, there was no sign of the truck. They searched the area, but all they found were the tracks leading into the cornfield and the flattened stalks where the truck had gone off the road. We never found out who that driver was or why he targeted us that night. Every year, our small town hosts the Main Street Fall Festival. Vendors line the streets, selling everything from homemade jams to knitted scarves. My sister Abby and I had been a part of it for as long as I can remember. Our thing? Caramel apples. We'd been making and selling them since we were kids, and every year they were a big hit. This year, things felt the same as always. At first, the sun was shining, and the cool autumn breeze rustled the leaves in the trees. Our booth was set up right in the middle of Main Street, with a perfect view of the town square and all the activity around us. Mom and Dad trusted us to handle the booth on our own. They were just a few blocks away at home, and besides, this was our town. We knew everyone. The day started off great. People came by, chatted with us, bought our apples, and complimented our display. But as the afternoon wore on, the festival crowd started to thin. That's when we noticed him. He was older, maybe in his late 50s or early 60s, with thinning gray hair and a worn-looking jacket. At first, we didn't think much of it. People come and go all the time. But he lingered at the edge of our booth, just watching. Abby and I exchanged nervous glances, but I shrugged it off. Eventually, he came over. "How much for all the apples?" he asked, his voice gruff but casual. He gestured toward the table, where we had about 20 caramel apples still sitting. "All of them?" Abby asked, surprised. "That's a lot of apples." "We still have more people to sell to." He gave us a strange smile. "I'll pay double," he said, reaching for his wallet. Something about the way he said it made me uneasy. It wasn't just the offer. It was the way he was looking at us, like he wasn't really interested in the apples at all. "We'd like to save some for other customers," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. His smile faded. "But if I buy them all, you can come hang out with me for the rest of the day. No need to worry about the booth anymore." Abby's face went pale, and I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The festival wasn't crowded anymore, and there weren't many people walking by to notice what was happening. Before I could respond, the local sheriff, Mr. Daniels, appeared at the edge of the square. He must have noticed our uneasy expressions because he walked over, his hand resting casually on his belt. "Everything all right here, girls?" Sheriff Daniels asked, his eyes narrowing as he glanced at the man. The man stiffened and shoved his wallet back into his pocket. "Just making an offer," he muttered, before turning on his heel and walking away quickly, disappearing into the thinning crowd. Sheriff Daniels gave us a reassuring smile. "You girls be careful. Let me know if anything else happens." We thanked him, but after the sheriff left, Abby and I couldn't shake the creepy feeling. We spent the rest of the afternoon selling the rest of our apples, but our nerves were on edge, and we kept glancing around, half expecting the man to return. By the time the sun began to set, most of the vendors were packing up their booths. Abby and I had sold all our apples, and we were ready to head home. The street was quiet now, the festival winding down. We started tearing down our stand, trying to finish up quickly so we could go home. And that's when we saw him again. The man from earlier was standing at the far end of the street, watching us from behind one of the vendor tents. His face was partially hidden in the shadows, but I knew it was him. My heart started racing, and I could tell Abby was scared too. "We need to go," I whispered, my voice shaky. Abby nodded, and we grabbed our things as quickly as we could. We started walking, trying to keep our pace casual, but I could feel his eyes on us. When I glanced back, he was following, slowly at first, then picking up speed. Our house was only a few blocks away, but the streets were nearly empty now, and I knew we couldn't outrun him if he decided to catch up. That's when I remembered the shortcut, the storm drain that cut through the park behind Main Street. It was a tight squeeze, but we used to crawl through it all the time as kids. "Follow me," I hissed, and Abby and I veered off the main road, heading toward the drain. We reached the entrance to the storm drain and ducked inside, crawling through the narrow tunnel. The sound of our breathing echoed off the walls as we hurried through, the darkness closing in around us. Behind us, I heard the man's footsteps getting closer, then stopping. He couldn't fit in the drain. For a moment, all I heard was his heavy breathing outside the entrance. Then his footsteps retreated, and the night fell silent again. We crawled through the tunnel until we reached the other side, and when we emerged, we sprinted the rest of the way home. When we burst through the front door, our dad was waiting in the living room. "What's wrong?" he asked, seeing our panicked faces. We told him everything. He grabbed the phone and called Sheriff Daniels immediately, telling him what had happened. The sheriff came by a little while later, did a quick patrol around the neighborhood, but there was no sign of the man. Every fall, our middle school hosts a big fall dance, one of the most exciting events of the year. It's not fancy like prom or anything, but for us, middle schoolers, it's a big deal. The entire school gets decked out with orange and brown streamers, and the gym turns into a pumpkin-filled wonderland. There's always a DJ, food, and everyone shows up with their friends or their dates. One of the traditions that everyone loves is how the boys ask the girls to the dance. Instead of roses, they offer small white pumpkins. If a girl accepts the pumpkin, she's the guy's date. It's cheesy but cute, and for us 7th graders, it was something we all looked forward to. A week before the dance, we got a new student, Ethan. He moved to our school from another state, and as one of the more outgoing kids, I was assigned to show him around and help him adjust. Ethan was quiet, kept to himself, but he seemed all right. I told him about the dance and our little pumpkin tradition, just to fill him in on what everyone was excited about. The next day at lunch, something happened that I wasn't prepared for. I was sitting with my friends, talking about the dance and my upcoming date with Jacob. Out of nowhere, Ethan walked up to our table, holding a small white pumpkin. I was shocked. "Oh, Ethan," I stammered, feeling the eyes of my friends on me. "That's really sweet, but I already have a date." His expression changed instantly. His face twisted into something I hadn't seen before. "You were leading me on," he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. His voice was cold, full of anger. "No, I wasn't." I started to explain, but before I could finish, he threw the pumpkin into the trash can with a loud thud. The cafeteria fell silent for a second, and then the laughter started. Some kids thought it was hilarious, but I just felt horrible. Ethan stormed out of the cafeteria without another word. The rest of the week, Ethan avoided me. I saw him in the hallways, but every time I tried to wave or say hi, he either ignored me or walked the other way. My friends said to let it go. He was just being dramatic. But something about the way he acted stuck with me. Still, I didn't let it ruin the excitement for the dance. Finally, the night of the fall dance arrived. The gym was packed with kids in their best outfits. The music was blasting, and everyone was having a great time. Jacob and I danced, laughed, and hung out with our friends. And for a little while, I forgot all about Ethan and the awkward incident from lunch. That is, until I saw him. He was sitting alone in the corner of the gym, watching everyone from a distance. His eyes were cold, his face expressionless. I felt a pang of guilt. I didn't want things to end on a bad note. So I decided to go talk to him. "Hey, Ethan," I said, walking over to him. "I'm really sorry about what happened the other day. I didn't mean to make you feel like I was leading you on." He didn't respond. He just stared at me, his gaze unnerving. I tried again. "Look, I know this school is new for you, and I get that this whole dance thing can be awkward, but just leave," he said quietly. I paused, but something in me made me push a little further. "Ethan, really, I don't want things to be weird between us. You've been avoiding me all week, and I just want to clear the air." That's when he shifted slightly in his seat, and I saw it, a gun tucked into the waistband of his pants. My heart stopped. He noticed me staring at it, and his lips curled into a small smile. "Thanks for showing me around," he whispered. "But you should leave now, before anything happens." For a second, I couldn't move. My legs felt frozen in place, my mind racing. Was he really about to? I couldn't let myself finish the thought. Without thinking, I screamed, "He has a gun!" The music stopped, and the entire gym erupted into chaos. Kids started screaming, running toward the exits, knocking over tables and chairs in their panic. I stood there, frozen in place, my heart racing. One of the chaperones, Mr. Stevens, our gym teacher, sprinted across the gym toward Ethan. In one swift motion, he tackled Ethan to the ground, pinning him down while the rest of the adults scrambled to help. Kids were still screaming, but the teachers managed to calm everyone down as quickly as possible. It all happened so fast. But when Mr. Stevens pulled the gun from Ethan's waistband, we realized it wasn't real. It was an airsoft gun, the tip painted black to make it look real. The sight of it made my stomach turn. The police were called, and they took Ethan away. The airsoft gun might not have been real, but the fear in that gym was. For a few minutes, we all thought our lives were in danger, and that feeling didn't go away just because the gun wasn't real. Thanks so much for listening to Nightmare Narratives. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be reminded when we post a new video every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central Time. If you have a story you'd like to hear read on the channel, email it to us at officialnightmarenarratives@gmail.com, and you might just hear your story featured in a future episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.